And if not used Simpl, please give it a try.
80% of success is just showing up. India has created a niche in, I would say, more commerce and especially quick commerce now.
Google or Microsoft come out of India. Even the next level companies to come out of India, our country needs to be richer.
The concept of Khata is what Simpl is building. 26,000 merchants in India. Simpl is L2 on top of UPI. For online commerce to continue to grow in India, postpaid is the right experience, and Simpl is one way of providing the consumer a postpaid experience.
The big problem that Simpl solves using data science models is these: whom to trust, with how much money, and how to detect bad actors.
The goal is to provide wonderful, beautiful, delightful experience to 99.9% of the users, and only have 0.1% of the transactions flagged as suspicious. And that is a very hard engineering problem. The best payment experience is actually no experience. Consumer is a hard problem. The Western world, when it comes to quick commerce, like you were asking, what you've learned 10 years ago doesn't matter. What matters is what you learned in the last year. And therefore, especially in engineering, you need to have strong foundation.
Hey, welcome to yet another episode of SCALER Pod. Today we have with us Puneet and Vivek from Simpl. I'm sure most of the people watching this would have probably used it sometime or the other while ordering. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. This is a gift from Team Simpl. This is my favorite movie. I saw some, posters in the back. This is the best Indian movie ever. If you've not seen this movie, stop the podcast right now. Go and watch this movie.
Nice. So thank you so much. I think our studio team has been decorating with a lot of nice posters, and maybe we can have this one up here as well. So
Jaane bhi do yaaro.
We will get it put up. For this episode itself, we'll have it in the background.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And if not used Simpl, please give it a try.
Call out. Nice. So I have a lot of questions for both of you, and I'll get into questions around what all Simpl is doing. But I'll first love to get to know a little bit about both of your journey so far in tech, how it all started. I think you both have spent a lot of time together at VMware, right?
Yep.
Either of you, if you want to go over it.
Okay, I'll go first then. I did my undergrad from IIT Kanpur in computer science, and before doing my undergrad I didn't really know what is computer science. I mean, it was okay, cool kids, go to IIT Kanpur computer science, I'll do that. I don't know what is being taught there. Okay, so but as I studied, I really liked computer science. Okay, but during those days I liked theoretical aspects of it way more than what I do now, for example.
Right.
I followed up with the masters from University of Illinois, then did my first job at VMware in California, where Puneet was a colleague of mine.
Nice.
And we may have some stories to tell what I learned from Puneet.
A lot of stories.
After a few years in VMware, I returned back to India, and I didn't know what to do. We will discuss that during those days. So I finished undergrad in 2003, masters in 2005, I returned back to India in 2008.
Okay.
And we will maybe discuss what was the tech situation like in 2008.
Yep.
But I really wanted to return back, and I did not know what to do.
Okay.
There were some Google and Microsoft offices here in India, but I found out that the work being done is not very interesting, so I was not inclined. But I did want to return back to India, and I thought, okay, IIT was cool, IIM, another cool thing, let's spend some time there. So I got admitted to IIM. Did the 2-year MBA course there. During that time, I realized, okay, IIT was good, but management and all, not. I can do better.
Yeah.
After that, I shifted to tech world again while in India. During those 2 years, I got used to India as well, once again. And for the next few years, I tried some ideas of my own which did not work and worked in a startup. Then tried some idea of my own once again And this time it slightly worked. So me and my co-founder Sachin founded a company called QGraph, which we ran for 3-4 years, and then we exited, sold it to a Taiwan-based company called Appier.
Okay.
After taking some break, I joined Google. After a few years at Google, Puneet got in touch with me. Puneet was already at Simpl, and I joined Simpl along with Puneet, and continuing to be here.
Great, great. How about you?
Yeah, so I'm Puneet. I'm the CTO at Simpl right now. We're in a transition phase. Vivek will be our next CTO, so I'll be handling more products.
Right.
I grew up in Delhi. I went to Chandigarh for my undergrad, Punjab Engineering College. I graduated in 2002. Then I went to US to study University of Florida. 2004 graduated. And I have this interesting story. I believe in serendipity. There's a famous Woody Allen saying that 80% of success is just showing up.
Right.
So when I was in grad school, I wanted scholarship. So I was just going from professor to professor. And one professor who had this very hard, subject called virtual machines, nobody was interested in that. So I said, hey, professor, if you give me scholarship, I will do virtual machines. And professor agreed, and luckily I did, and I gained some skills. And VMware was the main company behind virtualization industry. So 2004 I joined VMware. It was a fantastic company. I worked there for 7 years. VMware was the biggest IPO in US in 2007.
Yeah.
Out of the door, I think it was a $10 billion plus company. Then I worked at a VC firm for 6 months. Another, serendipity, one VC met me and he says, hey, what are you doing? And I said, I'm taking a 6-month sabbatical. And he's like, oh, I like crazy people. I like people who just leave cushy jobs and go out. So why don't you come back and work with us? So I worked at Redpoint Ventures for 6 months as an EIR, entrepreneur in residence. And then I started my own company called WorkSpot. I worked there for another 7 years. It's still around. It's a post-Series E company, so it's between IPO and scale company. It's doing well. And then my wife said, we're going back to India. My wife is from a defense family. She's like, hey, I used to get salutes in India, and here I'm doing dishes and, the typical Indian problem. So, and we were having a hard time raising our kids. So we moved back to India. India is fantastic. Labor is cheap. So, got all the facilities you want.
Right.
And then Nitya, the founder of Simpl, the CEO of Simpl, was actually my roommate back in college during the undergrad days in Chandigarh. So he said, hey, what are you doing? Why don't you come take a look at Simpl? And then I connected with all my friends, including Vivek, and we said, hey, let's build a solid team. So in short, I have worked at a few companies, but large, stints, 7 years at VMware, 7 years at WorkSpot, and now 4 years at Simpl. So I'm very old. 20 years of experience in the industry, but I like to work with people I've known for a while, right? So like Vivek and I know each other for like close to 20 years now. Nitya and I know each other for more than 25 years. So it's fun to, work with people where you have deep understanding and, you have, I think, mutual admiration for the skills you bring to the table.
Right. Right off the bat, because you both have, worked at VMware, you both have also started off your careers in US and moved back. And we were discussing a while back before as well that, what's the difference in sort of how the tech is being built and the team that is building the tech? What's the difference between, let's say, early 2010s or 2000s time, a place like VMware where you're working on something like virtualization versus like, more consumer applications, which is what a lot of the tech landscape in India is right now?
Yeah, so I think the two answers. First is the culture is evolving. Like when I went to US and there is this area called Silicon Valley, you go to any cafe, there's Red Rock Cafe in Mountain View, there is Coupa Cafe, University Cafe on University Avenue, Palo Alto downtown, and people will be building things and talking about startups. I think the same culture exists in India now. Like if you go to a, Blue Tokai Coffee here in Bellandur or a Starbucks near Adarsh Palm, it's the same culture and same people. However, I think India is still working on applications, e-commerce, fintech, whereas US is a lot more diverse. US will be systems, hardware, Cisco, now AI, right? Like bleeding edge technologies that are coming out of universities, and those technologies are evolving, and there is a lot of funding for those technologies. India is still, obviously doing well. Like the kind of scale we see in India, Jio Cinema will have 50 million users on good days. US, the best days like Super Bowl will have 100 million users, right? So the number of logins on Dream 11 before the match, or the kind of scale, the kind of transactions per second hitting NPCI or one of the UPI apps is pretty high.
So in scale, I mean, pure consumer scale, I think we do better than US in terms of like, because you are talking about Super Bowl, I think IPL actually gets more traffic than Super Bowl.
Yes, exactly, right. So those things India have really progressed. I think commerce and fintech, and to an extent, I would say health care a little bit. These industries have evolved a lot, but when it comes to more systems close to hardware, AI, or even space tech, I think they're still very early days. There's a long way to go. Like if you look at US, there is Israel, which is very good in security and hardware, and there is China, again, very good in hardware and commerce. India has created a niche in, I would say, more commerce and like especially quick commerce now. And to an extent fintech, and engineers are good. I mean, Vivek can give you more color.
So I have thought about this question, and I have thought the following: why don't companies like Google or Microsoft come out of India? Okay, I've given it some thought, and the way I see it is that long ago, India started its software journey with companies like Infosys and TCS, a services-based company. And for a long time, these were the only opportunities available here. Actually, when I was wanting to return back to India, other than some Google office, actually, if I go back 2 years back from then, there was nothing here. Okay. Then gradually, for example, in 2007, Flipkart started. There are so many other companies. Simpl started much later, but Simpl is also a good tech company. But we are not at that point that we have some really iconic companies, world level iconic companies coming out of here. And I think it will happen in next, I don't know what time, but it will happen. Right. My thinking is that for these companies, for even the next level companies to come out of India, our country needs to be richer. When country is richer, people have more spending power, and then technological innovation happens because of that. For example, Google earns its revenue from ads, and there are lots of people. Ultimately, you need to have the consumer for the tech companies also to flourish. And so my thinking is that as India gets richer, we will have it.
I want to add one point. It's a very distinct point. Maybe it's a cultural thing. When Vivek and we were at VMware and in the US working, our role models were the best engineers in the company doing hardcore stuff. So we both talk about there was an engineer called Ole Agason, our favorite engineer there. And if you talk to Google engineers, they will say Jeff Dean has famous memes, and Sanjay,
John Carmack,
Sanjay Ghimawat, and all these guys, right? Very famous. I think India culture, engineering role models are not there. Like people, again, thanks to SCALER podcast, you guys are highlighting CTOs and senior engineering leaders. But we engineers and tech people spend more time on Ashneer Grovers of India, and nothing against him, but like we have to admire people who are doing hardcore technology and innovating, and what I call deep moat IP building. Right? Like there are very few companies in India where I feel there is deep technology moats, but like Vivek said, and I'm also very optimistic, then in the next 10-20 years we will see a lot of these companies coming through.
Right. Also, I think as we probably face more India-specific challenges when we are trying to apply technology to our problems, I think that will also bring about opportunities where you have to work on the problem in India because it is an India-specific problem. Maybe I don't know, on the data science front. I think in this whole space, there's a lot of volume of transactions like UPI and all.
I'm waiting for self-driving cars. If a car can drive in Bangalore, it can drive anywhere in the world.
So, by the way, you guys are working on any, India-specific challenge that you feel like?
If you think, well, Simpl is based out of India.
Yeah,
so all the challenges that we have are India-specific challenges.
So let me first introduce, like what we are doing, and
yeah, that's what I was about to ask.
Easy to understand the challenges.
You can paint a picture of what Simpl does.
So our view is first, if you go back and you look at the Indian history, there are a lot of concepts in the Indian culture that have been proven to be very valuable over time. Cold showers, right? Everybody in India, historically takes a cold shower, and suddenly the Western world says, "Oh, this is so awesome." India does, we do Namaste. Pre-COVID, the whole world says, "Hey, we had no idea that germs can transfer when you shake hands." Intermittent fasting, it's a craze in the Western world right now. Fasting has existed in India for hundreds of years. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, it's part of our culture. So similarly, there is a building block in India called a Khata. A Khata was a concept where you go to a Kirana store, and the Kirana store will know who you are, build deep relationship with you as a customer, and say, "Hey, you have a tab open." Just like you go to a bar and you say, "Keep the tab open, I'll settle it at the end of the night." The Kirana store will say, "Don't worry, you take the stuff, and then at the end of the month or end of the cycle, you clear all the bills." And very important, it was an instrument given by the merchant to the consumer, so that the consumer gets differentiated experience. It improved sales. It improved the loyalty between the customer and the merchant. So that concept, the concept of Khata, is what Simpl is building. There are like shiny terms, pay, shop now, pay later is what it is called. But at the core of what we build is a distributed Khata.
Right.
Where, because we moved online, it's not just one Kirana store, it's a bunch of grocery stores, your food stores, you can do fashion shopping. We work across 26,000 merchants in India, and then you get a small limit. So these are also, not massive limits. A sweet spot would be 10,000, 15,000 rupees that a consumer gets for their day-to-day, transactions. Now, in terms of technology, how would I describe this? I will say Simpl is L2 on top of UPI. So you bundle 10, 15 transactions and settle them on UPI every 15 days. And by doing that, you are essentially giving the consumer a much better experience, purchase protection. The user gets a little more peace of mind because they haven't prepaid. Right? Like if you think about fundamentally, why is e-commerce broken? Like in the consumer world today, in the offline world, you go to a store, you look at 5 shirts, you touch them, you wear them, then you go to the checkout and you say, "Hey, here's my, take the money and I'm out." When you go to a restaurant, you first order, the food comes, you have a delightful experience with your family or your loved ones, and at the end you tip and you pay and you go out. But online commerce has flipped. Right? You want to buy something? No, you have to pay first. You want to order food? No, you pay first. So the user is taking all the risk. The merchant is saying, "No, I will not let you do this. You take all the risk." And we feel that experience is broken. Postpaid is the right experience, which means that for online commerce to continue to grow in India, postpaid is the right experience, and Simpl is one way of providing the consumer a postpaid experience.
Right. And that leads me to the following observation, that as Puneet said, that okay, it is a distributed Khata over the internet. All right. So we want to give this Khata facility to people across internet. In your neighborhood shop, that person, that okay, this is a trustful guy, has been living here forever, he won't go anywhere. But on the internet, how do you know that? And also in the neighborhood example from which the inspiration of Khata comes from, we know how much this guy can afford. I mean, okay, you have spent 1,000 rupees, now please pay me back. Or maybe you are a very rich guy, you have spent 10,000 rupees, then you can pay me back. So now over the internet, when we are dealing with anonymous people, how do we figure out whether I can trust a person or not? And if I can trust them, with how much limit I can trust them. And when I am giving this Khata facility on the internet, there are a lot of bad actors who will pose like good guys and try to get this facility and run away with the money.
Yeah.
So the big problem that Simpl solves using data science models is these: whom to trust, with how much money, and how to detect bad actors.
So we are an e-commerce bureau in some way. Like when you go to a bank, you say, "Hey, bank, I need a loan for my house or a car."
Right.
The bank says, "Okay, show me your bank statement. Let me see how much money is coming in, how much money is going out."
Yeah.
We don't do any of that, right? So the underwriting that we do as a fintech is very different from a traditional, a banking unit. We're not giving a loan to the consumer. We're giving a facility which is called Khata, and it's small limits. And people don't want to actually take a loan for 400, 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees when you're buying, small. It's a convenience thing. So it has to have a very different mindset. So how we underwrite, how we do fraud control. When you are in the money moving business, it's a very risky business. There are Jamtaras of the world always interested in coming and taking money out.
Exactly.
So a lot of deep IP is built into monitoring every user who's in the system, every transaction, real-time fraud detection. So a lot of hard challenges around, a few hundred milliseconds, how much can you do and compute, right? So it's a lot of real-time systems.
I think you can shed some light on
Yeah,
this.
let's. I mean, I am fascinated by fraud or anti-fraud. Rather. Before joining Simpl, I'm a software engineer by training and by experience. And before joining Simpl, I had never worked in Fintech and I had never worked in any anti-fraud kind of area. Okay, but now I am like a lot of my brain bandwidth goes
that
into
is also very
anti-fraud.
India-specific problem.
And that is very India-specific because
Uber opened their anti-fraud team only after launching in India.
Indians
so
are
one of my
very-
friends was one of the first people in that team.
Fraud is everywhere. Like if you look at PayPal story, there is a very thick PayPal
Yeah,
book.
of course there
Half
is.
of it is about fraud.
But
US fraud was happening from Russia.
I think Indians are way innovative people. So we should apply our brain in good things rather than fraud, if any fraudster is listening to this podcast. So this anti-fraud is a very, very multi-dimensional problem.
Right.
So let me explain you some of its dimensions.
Sure.
So on one hand, we try to develop data science models to detect from the patterns of the API calls that we are getting. We try to figure out that this user is actually fraudster, or maybe this user account has been taken over by a fraudster. So he's not a fraudster, but he has maybe shared some OTP or something. Or maybe installed some bad thing in their device, and now keylogger is reading all their mobile messages. Okay, so one is data science model, but data science model take time to develop. They need a lot of data, they need time to develop. Then second aspect is let's say heuristic-based analytics. You try to find patterns by firing SQL queries. Okay, so you try to find. So that is a separate work stream that we do. Third is just manually monitoring the activities, manually monitoring the transactions that are happening, and if you feel like there is a suspicious transaction, you call that person and you try to figure out if this is a fraudster or this is an account takeover. And finally, you just need to think. Which is a totally third activity. Just need to brainstorm and need to think as to what might be happening. Maybe just be active on Facebook, here, there. What kind of things are being talked about?
Sometimes somebody finds a loophole and put out a YouTube video about it.
Fraudster put up a Instagram page, Simpl support. We have Simpl support. And then somebody, and by the way, you can call us at this phone number. Then somebody has some problem with their transaction, they search for Simpl support, they hit that page, they call that guy, and they make them share some OTP and do fraudulent transaction. The poor guy was already having a problem.
But in terms of technology, it is, you've got billions of data points.
Right.
So you have to, you're always generating insights from a large set of data points. Right. So you have, if you think in terms of the tech stack, there is, multiple layers, right? We use Kafka and Databricks and, Redshift, and what I think Vivek is saying is it's non-trivial to generate real-time insights. And it's non-trivial to block everything in software alone. So it's man plus machine.
Of course.
Machine can do a lot of things, but machine has false positives, right? So if machine says these 10 transactions look suspicious, not every transaction should be blocked. So
I
some
mean, then you
human
have a bad
intervention is
experience
required.
for people as well,
Right? So, and therefore, the goal is to provide wonderful, beautiful, delightful experience to 99.9% of the users,
Right.
and only have 0.1% of the transactions flagged as suspicious. And that is a very hard engineering problem.
Makes sense. Yeah. And where do you see also this particular thing you're saying that, the model of Khata being applied? And I kind of resonate with that. I know friends who are, very frequent users of Simpl. I admittedly am not, I've used once or twice, but yeah, they say that they like that fact that you don't need to make the payment every time.
So, retail is very interesting. The best thing about retail is the product you are buying, right? It's a dopamine thing.
Right.
You're buying something because you feel good or you think this will bring you happiness.
Correct.
But as soon as you go to the payment, suddenly the right brain says, hey, what are you doing? Right? You shouldn't be buying this, right? That's why most of the, a good chunk of shopping is actually discretionary, which is called so because if you wait for 5 minutes, you can change your mind, right? You are on Myntra, you like something and you're like, oh, it looks so good on me. But if that payment page takes a minute, you will change your mind.
Yeah.
So the best payment experience is actually no experience. The experience should be as little as possible. And if you look at Amazon in the US or the Western world, they say buy now, and they have your card on file or everything so that you don't leave the app.
Correct.
And the transaction goes through as quickly as possible so that you don't feel that payment pain in some way.
Yeah, I mean,
right? The
here
user
with
is
the cards, like you do have the OTP step.
Yes, there is no OTP in the US.
There's no OTP in the US,
Yes,
so
yes.
yeah. I
And
know.
in India, like even the UPI success rate is not 100%, right? It's 85%. Sometimes the bank is down, the switch has a problem, or you change your mind when you went out.
Right.
So the goal of any payment leader
Right.
is to make sure that the success rate is as high as possible.
Right.
Success rate should be 99%, which is not the case in India today. The second goal is you have as much loyalty as possible, because you want people to get a good first time experience, a better second time experience, so they become loyal to your platform. Right? Like every large merchant in India wants the same, right? Whether it's food, let's say Zomato or Swiggy, it's quick commerce, Zepto, Blinkit, Instamart. Everybody wants that user should stick to that platform, right? Like a Flipkart group or a travel group like MakeMyTrip group, right? Everybody wants the user should come back to the same platform.
Right.
So how are you providing a differentiated and a loyalty-based experience? And we feel Khata is one essential component for that. So that's how we are trying to build Simpl.
Right. And where do you see it growing? Also, do you see like beyond e-commerce also places where this model is probably going to get adopted?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I moved to India, when I was looking at the market, and Nitya, the founder of Simpl, who's a good friend of mine, we were discussing this. In the US, there are 300 million, the population of US is 300 million, and there are 500 million credit cards or more. So the default way of buying online is through a credit card.
Yeah, everybody has
right?
multiple cards.
India has 700 million bank accounts. At least 500 million people are using UPI frequently. But there are only 30 million unique people with a credit card. Right? Even though they say the credit cards issued are between 75 to 100 million, 30 million unique users are there. So the default experience is prepaid or COD. And COD is the worst because 20-25% of the COD orders are actually returned.
Yeah.
So the merchant is actually paying for the logistics and then the return to origin.
Yeah.
Which is 100 rupees
without
flat.
a successful sale.
Right. So merchants in India are really struggling right now, and I think that prepaid, where you force the user to take all the risk, or COD, where the user has absolutely no risk, both are not perfect. So the US and the Western world has shown us that a debit instrument should be linked to a credit instrument, and credit or a postpaid is the right way to pay. Because then the user has some skin in the game, and then the user can get the item, has a 15 to 30 day cycle to decide if the product is good or not, and then return, right? So the user doesn't feel the pain that, oh, I prepaid, now how will I get a refund? And whether you want to commit to that buy, there should be a window. So we think that 10 to 15 day window makes a huge difference in increasing commerce in India. Our take personally is that I think 70% of commerce in India will move to a postpaid instrument, right? So there is a lot of innovation happening. Like UPI is a fantastic, technology, like a base layer, which is actually most Indians don't appreciate this, but this is the most bleeding edge in the world. Even in US, if you want to pay someone, it takes 2 days to settle.
Account settlements.
It's like 48 hours. Correct. UPI is instant, but there is not a lot of innovation happening on top of UPI. Right, so we feel whether it's like a simple Khata instrument or NPCI is trying to do credit on UPI, RuPay cards. Right. Banks have to innovate to give people more credit cards. Banks are using old school loan management systems. They need to modernize how to think about small limits, right. Not like 1 lakh, 2 lakh, but 10,000, 5,000, because that's the middle class of India, right? So my take is credit cards are like big expensive cars. And UPI or Indian is like a scooter. There'll be a bunch of new instruments which are like Maruti cars and Hyundai cars, and these are evolving over the next 5 to 10 years.
Another thing is like on a card, like a lot of US card companies, the ads literally have this "it pays to be on this card" kind of a thing, right? Because there are a lot of mechanisms to keep the user on the platform, like rewards, points, and like loyalty programs, and like certain number of years you are there and all of that. So do you see those kind of things also get built on top of the Khata model also similarly over time?
Yes, we are thinking hard about loyalty and the rewards. The Indian consumer doesn't pay for anything. Right? I mean, pet peeve, the Indian consumer is so pampered, right? Thanks to the Paytms of the world, they, put, or cred right now, they put so much money in the market. Indian consumer doesn't want to pay for anything. And every time they shop, they want actually a lot of rewards and cash back, right? It's like you are in a casino and you want that sound of coins coming through every time you buy something. So yeah, I mean, it has to be built. I think the people are trying to build something that scales, right. But for that, the market and the economics, the unit economics also have to work. So pleasing the Indian consumer is a hard problem. Right? Like we have a lot of support tickets. Simpl is a free product for the consumers, but when they complain, consumer is king. They're like, hey, you made a mistake, fix it. Right? So sometimes we have to do instant refunds where the user says, my dal was not good on Zomato, I'm not paying for it, right? And then you take care of it, right? So we actually go all the way to work with our partners and say, hey, how do we settle this? Because this is a chargeback. Yeah. The consumer is not happy, right? In short, the Indian consumer.
Chargebacks are also an interesting thing because like that exists in sort of the social fabric of America, but it does not kind of exist in that sense in India where like people, like the whole trust in payments is built on top of that, the chargeback can travel through the whole chain. And is that something that also you are working on?
We are, yes. We think purchase protection doesn't exist in India and Simpl provides it today. We haven't really done it at a wide scale, but that's something we are working on. I think if you look at merchants like Myntra and Jio, they actually provide this in some way. Right? Like my wife is a huge shopper on Myntra. I see 3 things coming in, 2 things going back. 3 things coming in, mechanism, 2 things going back. So this is actually customer experience. This is delightful customer experience where you are providing that in-store experience through an online forum.
Returns,
right? Returns. And let's assume that someday some retailer comes up with a rule, we'll put you in the red zone if you return more than 5 times. Right? So you have to think long term.
Correct.
Long term, you have to think that what is the lifetime value of the customer,
right? And
how do you make the customer like your product, like your platform, and build a relationship with that. So what Myntra does, what Amazon does, what Flipkart does, they let you return, obviously with some guardrails, but that builds that consumer trust. So Simpl is trying to do the same thing on the payment side. Right. We really want to be the L2 on top of foundational UPI layer or debit layer, and then give users trust, a little bit of flexibility in terms of 15-day window, and then provide more and more features.
Got it. You're talking about one thing I will come back to is the the data science models for assessing risk. And one thing I'm very interested in knowing is that as you scale, and last few years Simpl has also been growing in terms of user base. I have been looking at the numbers, but now when you go beyond that, whatever definition, India A and all of that stuff, like people who are like, very high AOVs, buying daily, probably have bunch of bank accounts, bunch of credit cards. So you have a lot of data to be able to assess who that person is, right? I mean, whether they will default or not default. But when you sort of, go more towards the fringe where you have your users signing up with way less amount of information with just a phone number. So what are the challenges, and as well what are some
that's a secret sauce. That's a secret sauce.
Yeah. Well, you build your models with all the data that you have for the various users, and it is like this, that if you have very sparse data about a user, for example, the kind of thing that maybe there is a guy from some tier 2 city who just we saw in passing somewhere in our network but don't know a lot about it, then my models are not that confident about that user.
Okay.
And so it depends on situation. So for most of the time, I would pass. I would say, okay, I don't know much about it. I have just seen him once, twice, thrice maybe. So I need that person to build more. I mean, I need to see them somewhere in the network more number of times. And sometimes we just do some ad hoc experiments that, okay, let's approve some users, some risky set of users, and watch over the cycles and months how they perform. Right. How they perform, as in, do they pay me back or do they not pay me back? And if it's so there are a lot of such experiments which keep happening, and some of those experiments succeed, that hey, maybe this is a good user, and then we incorporate them in our mainstream model.
So, but at a like a 10K level, there are these users who have specific patterns. And we are very good, data science is all about patterns and lookalikes.
Exactly,
So you'll be surprised that it's not tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, it's just the consumer groups. So there are a lot of young people from tier 2 cities who buy on Birkenstock. There are a lot of people from tier 2 cities who love Snitch, right? And when they go shop on Snitch on the payment page, we get some breadcrumbs. This user is trying to buy something for 500 rupees on this platform, and then we say yes or no depending on the merchant, and then we have billions of these points. So I clearly know how to distinguish between users, right? So if a user, it doesn't matter if it's from tier 1, 2 or 3, but what they're trying to buy is a very Gen Z thing, then it gets classified as Gen Z.
Got it.
If the user comes from a Meesho or a Snapdeal, then most likely it's a tier 3 user coming online for the first time.
Got it.
Right. If the user is seen on a Zomato or a Swiggy, so they want to order food. So these are young people, ordering food, time of the day, what they're ordering. A lot of these things matter a lot. Right. Like quick commerce is just going through the roof right now. I don't know if you've observed, and we work with all the quick commerce vendors, our partners like Blinkit, Zepto, and Instamart, and we're doing really well there. That's a category where Khata just fits so nicely.
I mean, that's the only place I have
very high
Simpl,
frequency. 3-4 times a week these orders are happening. If you look at these right now, it's mostly tier 1, tier 2. But the adoption is just going through the roof. So I feel India will leapfrog the Western world when it comes to quick commerce. Like you were asking, the difference in India and US. India leapfrog wired infra. There was, like when we were studying here, we did Ethernet, and we thought, it'll take so long for all these fiber optic cables to come through. And thanks to Jio, everybody has amazing internet.
Mobile
speeds,
internet has been the way people.
Yeah. So I think same is happening now. Only Flipkart and to a large extent, Amazon build good warehousing in India, doing traditional commerce. But this new quick commerce wave will actually leapfrog the old commerce completely. This is the way I feel Gen Z and Gen Alpha and young people will buy 80% of their stuff in the future, because once you get used to getting something in 15 minutes, why would you order it and get it 2 days later?
Makes sense. Yeah. And I think I get how it fits because that's the thing for which I have also used Simpl mostly is like
Right, and like consider
Instamart kind of orders
traffic,
and all, yeah,
supply chain, logistics. These are hard problems to solve, but the quick commerce guys are innovating, and hats off to them. They're providing you whatever you want in 15 minutes. And in my case, like I live in Bangalore where the traffic is so bad, and I get things in like 7 minutes sharp.
Yeah.
Coming to, so you earlier asked about, hey, you have some less data about some user and more data about some other user. Yeah. So, and I have described to you that, hey, we have some models which run and which approve users. Approving meaning, okay, now you can transact using Simpl. We are ready to take a little bit of bet on you. Now, we have continuously innovated on these models. And specifically, one of the things that we are very proud of is that we have the capability to run this model in real time. So let me take some time to explain why it is so sophisticated and why I am so happy about it. Yeah. So when you go to, let's say, some app, we were discussing Blinkit, and when you go to the payment page of that app, then before rendering the payment page, an API call gets made to Simpl servers, which is known as approval call. Okay. Now, approval call needs to be super fast because Blinkit is waiting for it to respond back so that they can decide whether they need to show Simpl or not need to show Simpl.
Absolutely,
okay. So we need to be very, very fast. And it is a challenge. It is a challenge in high scale because lot and lots of approval calls are hitting our servers. It needs to be scalable and still be low latency. Now, if that were not enough, we now want to evaluate this user in real time. As in, do they deserve, should we trust this user or not? I want to run the model in real time before I respond back to the merchant server. So long ago, we could not do that because our models were heavy, they were not real time ready, and the other processing, the boilerplate processing took a lot of time. But slowly over, it has been more than a year now, but it took us maybe 9 months to 1 year to make sure that we can do feature computation for the model in real time and then run the model in real time so that we can respond very quickly and approve the user as soon as possible. I mean, I just see you and now I evaluate you and I let you transact.
This is something that you would probably have even SLAs with your clients, right? I mean, they need a cutoff to show their payment page and possible PGs.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be surprised how much gets done in 50 milliseconds.
Yeah.
It's just crazy amount of computation, and this is still CPU, right? So we're not even running these things on GPU, which I think would be the next wave in technology, where some code will run on GPUs.
Right.
That makes me wonder. So for example, we are running real time on this. In my earlier life, I used to work at a ad tech company. Okay, it was Vizuri, where we used to show ads. Now that ad word is also very, very sophisticated, and so you go to some website and you see some ad, and you feel like, okay, some ad is getting shown to me. But what is happening in background is that before that ad is getting shown, some API call is getting made to Google. Let's say it is being shown by some Google DoubleClick or some AdSense or something.
Mediator.
Now that Google is calling 5 or 10 partners, how much are you willing to bid for this slot?
There is a real-time auction that happens.
Real-time bidding, Everybody is responding back. And Google is doing some computation and then showing you that simple ad. So processing has become so cheap and network speeds have become so fast that so much work.
Distributed computing, you can bring down that processing to as close to the user as possible these days.
The way I think is so much work is being done to show you a silly ad. That's
a really big business.
We are at least allowing user to transact, doing some e-commerce. It's ad, okay, all right, fine, ad. Yeah, I know.
Because I'm in this business now, so
ad runs the
thousands of crores difference happens. That ad mediation logic is.
When you talk to ChatGPT, I don't know what happens there, but I'm guessing a lot of stuff happens before ChatGPT answers you. Right?
Of course.
Right. Big large language models.
Not just GPT. I think the interesting part that's starting to happen is that these days this GPT kind of LLMs being integrated into like the bigger players like Bing and Google and Meta, they are trying to also inject ads into the answer. So Bing does that, and that's obviously interesting because
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, every 20 years there is a big generational shift that happens, and we are the Google generation. I think the next generation may not be the generation that uses the search interface. Maybe they are more used to chatting with someone, conversation, right? My son is 9, and he just asked something to Siri. He's like, "Dad, do you know the distance between sun and earth?" I'm like, "No, I don't remember." He's like, "Hey Siri, how far is sun, from Earth? How far is moon from Earth? How long it takes to go to, Alpha Centauri or something, right?" So the next generation is using more conversations, and I think that is a challenge for these incumbents like Bing and Google.
Makes sense. I'll change tack to a little bit more about people. And from what I understand, these data science models, definitely you are building out a cutting edge data science team. So how is hiring for that going? What are the challenges, and what's your opinion of the talent market in India?
I'll tell you. How do we hire? How does anybody hire? We hire by interviewing people. We ask them coding questions, maybe system design questions, and maybe some soft skills type of question that this guy will not fight with everybody. Okay, so that with that set of filtering, we can get we get people about whom we are reasonably confident that okay, this guy will do a good job, guy or girl will do a good job, above a baseline. But in any company, and there are lots of people who do a reasonable job, and then there are some people which actually make the company work. As in, who figure out what needs to be done, who can be relied upon to do some things, and we don't, at least I don't have a way to filter for that.
Right.
That's something that we get to know after.
Yes. But I mean, and that's why hiring is hard.
And maybe sometimes somebody refers you somebody that okay, you have worked with somebody, you just know them, so you get lucky.
I use mental models. So my view of the world is, if at a very high level, there are 3 roles in engineering, flat. There are people who are hackers. These are the people who love to build and code, and they'll crunch things at a regular interval, and they just love to build. This is, in my opinion, a hacker world, the hacker sort of position. Then there is a painter position. Painters are people who are in software, they're architects, but they just love hard problems. They don't want their GitHub to be green all the time. They want to take on a problem where they sleep on it for a month, like build a data model, or think about what feature should be in the model, or think about, should we use random forest or should we use something else, right? Like those are painters. And then the third role is an operator, right? Operator's role is to make sure what is the efficiency of the company. Are we doing the right things? Are we building the right things? Are we, do we have the right people? Are the people disciplined? Are we shipping ASAP? Because all these things have to come together. So when I interview, before interviewing someone, I make up my mind what is the role and what do I need? Do I need a hacker, a painter, or an operator? And then when I interview, I see some signs that this person has proven to do well in this role. Right? If someone says, "Oh, I used to be a hacker now and I want to be an operator now," look, I don't have time to take chances on you. Right? You have to come with enough proof points for me to get excited, at least at the senior levels, right? At the junior level, it could be anything, but at a senior level, I want to see some proof points. Right. There is a saying that you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've come from. So what you've done in the past speaks a lot.
Right.
I believe a lot in reference checks. Right. The best inputs and insights come if you do a good reference check. And third thing is, I like people who stay in companies for a good duration, because you can't do anything substantial in 6 months, a year or two. Like to do something substantial, you need to get those, as Steve Jobs says, scar tissue. You have to stay, you have to make mistakes, you have to fail, you have to stand up again and deliver. So if I look at a resume where there is a young engineer moving every year, I am not too impressed. I mean, I would still be intellectually honest and ask, hey, why did this happen?
Of course.
But if I look at a resume where it's 4 years, I'm at least a little more excited.
Makes sense. Another thing is, like, you both have moved back to India, been a while, and then, you know, during this time, how have you seen the market for candidates evolve, and especially like when you are hiring for specifically roles which will involve solving hard engineering challenges? You know, has it become better to hire for those roles? Has it become harder?
I think the quality of people over time has improved. Quality of people available in India over time has improved. I mean, I have now like more than 10 years, 2010 to now, 14 years of history. Yeah. So people were always smart. People were always smart, but as the sophistication of companies which are operating in India have increased, those smart people have right opportunities to learn and hone their skills. And so their, let's say, technical competence to solve relevant problems here has been rising over time. And I wish that this trajectory continues.
My take is now there is so much access to information. Right? Like 20 years ago when we graduated, there was no Coursera, you didn't have YouTube, you know, you could go in. Today you want to learn something, you know, you have access to everything. So I would say that 20 years ago I would look at the college, you know, the user is, the person is graduating from a lot. Now I don't. I look for raw horsepower, raw skills, you know, what is the rigor in the person who comes up. Some proof points that the user was able to learn fast, because, you know, compounding is the most important thing in engineering. What you've learned 10 years ago doesn't matter. What matters is what you learned in the last year. And therefore, especially in engineering, if you have 2 or 3 good job experiences, it really catapults your career. Right? Like if you think about why do people work in startups and why we advise them to work in startups, young people, is it gives you, like, you do a work of 3 people in a startup, because that's what startups do. You could work in a very large company where you work in one module that is one of the 100 modules, and you work on it and it doesn't get shipped for 6 months. But in a startup, you join, next week your code would be live, you know, in front of 10, 20, 30 million users. And that's the advantage, and that's the what I call compounding effect that's happening in India now. Having said that, I do have a pet peeve. I think this COVID generation is really bad. People who started working from home, that COVID generation who graduated around that time, they're so pampered because, you know, the comms were crazy, and, you know, they were just too entitled.
Also, I think you feel like there's lack of learning if you don't sit
lack of
across with
learning,
seniors.
lack of commitment, too entitled. So I feel people who are a little more experienced, in my opinion, are much better mature engineers. The young generation, you know, few years out of college, I don't see them working hard, right? I see them talking a lot about YouTube, Netflix, TikToks of the world, but they don't talk about systems and WebSockets and MongoDB versus, I don't know, it's Cassandra these days, or, you know, Postgres or CockroachDB, right? Like that is what core engineering is. You want young people to be passionate about technology, really go deep. Why do we use A versus B? Right? So the examples I gave you, you know, you have to be a hacker or a painter to be really successful, and that requires deep understanding and craftsmanship. Right? You really have to build a lot of things, make a lot of mistakes, and then evolve. And I don't see young people working very hard. Like maybe times have changed. When we were young, we had no life, so we would be working 12 hours a day, you know, in the US, and you know, in the Palo Altos, in the Silicon Valley, and, you know, learning a lot. People now, again, I may be biased, but my key point is there is so much access to information. And there would be so much learning if people just take this engineering craft more seriously.
Right. I think there's with the access to information also comes access to distractions.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even I have been hiring like crazy. We are scaling our team recently. I mean, I think I resonate with some of your points, but I think it's more of sifting for more needles from bigger haystacks is what it has become. But in that generation also, it's possible to find those potential painters sometimes, but yeah, it has become harder, I think, because probably I think your first, second level of filters, a lot of people get through because you have a lot of surface level information, and then when you sort of try to dig deeper, you find people who are talking a lot but not probably working with hard challenges
but like,
much. Yeah.
If you want a long career, you need to have strong foundation.
Exactly.
Right? Like just learning JavaScript doesn't make you an engineer. Right? You have to go deep. You have to know what is the level 7. Then did you know what is TCP, UDP?
Yeah.
Have you written anything in assembly? Right? So it's a big stack, and having that, I would say, work experience or at least foundational skills or the ability to at least learn deep stuff. Like deep work. That deep work is important for you to have a solid engineering career, in my opinion.
Makes sense. On a related note, I mean, we're talking about like how the probably Indian talent pool has evolved. Both of you have also spent early part of your career in US and you have come back now. And this is something just in the last episode with Joydeep, we were discussing the same thing. Is that do you think it's still like a good idea to probably spend a few years in the US tech ecosystem? Like, is that sort of essential or necessary maybe for people, or do you think that's not so much necessary anymore in today's world? And even if people do that, like, what does that add? Like, probably, you guys, what would you say that what your VMware stint being in the US for those years, what did that add in value?
I will take a stab at it. So, firstly, when you live outside the country, it is not only about work, what you learn, but it is a cultural thing also. Yeah. So definitely living outside the country, forget about work, but it is an enriching experience.
So
that is
get to absorb a lot of cultures, how things work.
Yeah, particularly for example, I had lived, when I went to US, I had lived only in UP, and that to some small cities, and then between Lucknow and Kanpur, I was done. So apart from the work thing, but it opens up your brain, that not opens up your mind, that not everybody thinks like you. I mean, things like people in my state or my city think. People think very differently, and there is nothing to be bad about. There is nothing bad about other things. So just going to undergrad institute was quite a opening up of mind for, because till then you are living with your family, and then you live with so many other people. So many of your assumptions get taken away. You become open-minded, and I think that is a very good thing. You become more objective. Now, purely from work point of view, I think it is a very case-to-case basis. I know people who have been completely in India and they are very smart. So it is not a necessity at all. If you do work in some great companies, so it is the fact that some of the best engineers of the world, like the one we discussed, Ole Egson and Jeff Dean and Sanjay Ghemawat, they are in the US. Now, if you go and work in the US, will you be working on those core projects with these core people? If yes, then great. If no, then hey, India also has lots of opportunities.
My short answer is, we all are a function of the 4 or 5 people we are with all the time. So it's not whether it's in US or India. The question is, who are the 3-4 people you will most closely be working with? And US had this advantage because you would go to first a university where there are like these famous professors, and these labs are exciting, and they have these research grants where they're working on something bleeding edge, which is not yet in industry, and then you go work in industry where there are a lot of engineers. Like where we worked, there was a lot of Stanford and MIT engineers, PhDs. So you just rub off. You learn from them, and like maybe Vivek was the smartest kid in Kanpur, and I was one of the smartest kids in Chandigarh or something. But when you go out, you realize that hey, the world is so big. Here, every second person is smarter than us, right? So suddenly, in the bell curve, you are on the right extreme, and you have just come to the middle. And then that compounding comes in because you are like, no, I want to be the best. I want to learn. So you try to learn very quickly, and it helps you move very fast. Now, India may change. Maybe there will be opportunities in India where somebody graduates and works in companies, startups, and they learn a lot. But I think the jury is still out. Like my son is 9. And he wants to do robotics, and I bought him a Lego Mindstorm kit, and there are very few places in India where it's even available, but in the US it's easily accessible, and a lot of the schools actually teach it, right? So there is still a difference. I do feel the access is becoming easier, right? Because now with YouTube and all these sites, the information
does
right, the world is flat. The information is everywhere, but the density problem still exists. Even in India, people have to move to either Bangalore or Mumbai to work in deep tech or the best companies in India. So if you want to work in security, you have to be in Tel Aviv. If you want to work in hardware, you have to be in Silicon Valley or one of these Israel or China, right? If you want to work in AI today, I don't see AI innovation happening in India, but a lot of AI companies are in the in the US, California, and Seattle to an extent, right? So if you want to do X, let's say you want to do space tech, right? You have to be in SpaceX because that's the Makkah right now for SpaceX, right? You could maybe work in some Indian startup, and there are some companies doing these micro satellites. You may learn, but to know what is bleeding edge, you have to go where the bleeding edge stuff is happening. So my suggestion is just figure out what you want to do as a young person, and then try to learn. There is a learning phase, and then there is a phase where you actually do something on your own. That you can do anywhere in the world. You can come back to India, start a company. You can, people can go to their home countries and do that. But there's still an advantage of going to US to study, in my opinion, today. It may change in 10, 15 years. I find Indian schools and universities to be very theory driven, whereas the schools in US and some schools in Canada and UK more practical. You build things, you have these assignments that gives you a good exposure, and especially if you're doing masters or graduate studies,
like
it's
build your own compiler or stuff like that. That does not happen here at all.
They are more theory driven, I agree, but internet is there, so people are very innovative. I mean, people nowadays very regularly people come out of
exposure.
People come out of institutes and open their startups. I mean, it's not taught in the schools, but they do that.
Correct.
So during our times, it was. I mean, I didn't know what to do. So I'll study next degree. but now it is very open. So
I mean, there are a lot of young people starting companies, and that's wonderful. What I mean is deep tech. I think deep tech is still missing here, and it will come. Let's hope it comes.
But I think I agree with what you're talking about. Like it's also depends on the nearest 4 or 5 people that you have, and by nearest 4 or 5 does not mean like physically near. I mean, for example, I have a few of my very good friends like who were my roommates during college. 3 of them are in US right now, and then some extended friends via them. And I go to the US once or twice a year and staying with one of them. Most of those offices are also, they are very welcoming. They're just, if any of the employees have a guest, you can just, bring them along and all of that. And the lunch is great in Google's office. But yeah, I mean, I feel I'm fairly abreast of a lot of stuff that, folks at probably all of these companies, maybe except Apple, because there you're not allowed to share much of what you're working on. But I have friends at Meta and Google, and some of them happen to work on really cutting edge stuff. So I get to know about a lot of those things, which I feel like, yeah, I mean, if I did not have those friends, I would not have been having much of an idea about that.
The work is different, the aspirations are the same, right? So I was telling you that the ladder is same in India and US now.
Yeah, and once you get that window, like once I get to know from somebody that they're working on this particular thing, like maybe a different OS for VR or something like that, and then you can like look that up, and you can find a bunch of people even in India working on similar things, because you have that window and you get to know that. But yeah, I think I feel like almost once or twice a year, whenever I go, especially SF, and you talk with like 10 people, each of those conversations, you just opens up a new window. Okay, this stuff is also happening, and this might be interesting. I think I don't feel it happening that much in, let's say, interacting with people sitting here in Bangalore. So that's definitely there. But yeah, once that window is opened, it's not that hard to find more about it, or tinker with it a little bit sitting here in India. That challenge is not there anymore because of the internet and because of all that content available. A lot of cutting edge stuff also happens on top of open source, so it's
absolutely.
Accessible.
I think it's called exploration or research.
Yeah.
That culture has to evolve to say education system should have the concept of research as part of the process.
Yeah.
We are very much into, here is a book, here is a subject, go learn it and give an exam and crack the exam. That's not the only thing, right? Like deep understanding is when you understand something and then you say, let me explore, right? Like most of the innovation happens when you stay with the problem for a long time. And how do you stay with the problem for a long time? You find an interest area and then you spend years doing it.
Right.
You could do it in schools and universities, or you could do it even professionally.
Right.
But real innovation happens, real breakthrough and disruption happens when you stay with the problem for a long time.
Right. And probably I'll trying to loop back a little bit on the culture at Simpl as well. So especially in the engineering teams, like, are there any probably rituals or any cultural practices that you have been able to build, which probably pushes people towards researching more on a little bit of deep tech kind of challenges, or just in general gets the engineers more curious to solve things in different ways? Anything that you have tried out and has worked?
My take is that I give lot of independence to the engineers. So it's not that I tell them what to do, but hey, if you want to do something, please feel free to do, and if there is something interesting you would like to discuss with me, please do that. And this has led to some of the innovations. So for instance, lately one engineer, a data scientist came up to us and say that, hey, I want to use this LLM, open source Llama model, to analyze this sort of information, for which so far we have been doing it using heuristic rules. And the next stage somebody was proposing, let's use traditional NLP, but he was like, I have used this LLM and I am getting some reasonable results. And he does need some big resource to run this model, and we have approved that and we are working on that.
Nice.
So that is my idea, that hey, everybody is free to do things and just show up.
I like checkpoints and ship stuff. I think there is a misconception that version 1 of anything will work great. People are like, no, it's not ready. Let me spend 1 more month. Let me spend 2 more months. My mental model is version 3 is when it will be ready.
Yeah.
So ship version 1 ASAP. If it's not broken, like I think Reid Hoffman says that if you're not embarrassed with the first release, then you've worked too much. So version 2, polish it, fix bugs, get it out. And then version 3 is when something is really ready for the market.
Right.
So if you want to create these guardrails where innovation is happening, like giving people independence and everything, but at the same time having checkpoints, like I say that, hey, you haven't shipped anything in 45 days, what's happening? You gotta ship it 45 days, 60 days. Like we not, like a lot of large companies like Microsoft have these research centers or research labs. They just produce papers, no real thing comes out. Like Microsoft had to go out and invest in OpenAI. And real innovation happens in startups because they're small, nimble. They have these checkpoints where they have to ship fast, and that's why there is a saying that small fish eats big fish in technology. Most of the innovation comes from small companies.
Got it. Talking about like when to ship and checkpoints and things, another question that just came to my mind was thought about asking you when you were saying that you are looking to migrate away from leading tech towards leading product with Vivek coming into head tech. So for engineers who are sort of mid-senior, senior, and a lot of times people do have some aspirations towards moving into working on product management, right? There have been a few, I think, big success stories in the industry of people who have done that. But what I have seen is that it does not necessarily pan out really well for a lot of people, because while that aspiration is there, probably like a good pathway to that, not a lot of people have been able to figure out. I mean, the question is like, as an engineer, if you do have sort of some interest in, owning the product, what are the things to probably work on?
Yeah. So look, there are only two roles: builder and seller. It's just
Absolutely.
like there are so many companies who have created these roles in the middle. There are builders and there are sellers. And every engineer, every product person, every program manager, every designer, every analytics person, you're nothing but a builder. Now within the builder realm, you could be writing code, you could be writing PRDs, you could be making designs, but you are inherently a builder. So the best product people are actually engineers. And what I see and what we do at VMware is we say, what are the top problems to be solved and who are the best problem solvers? And let's have them work on the problems. So Vivek and I, we've known each other for a while. We, tag team when required, but we also know that what are our strengths and areas where we can just let each other do things. So right now we have more issues in, let's say, product thinking. We have to go to our customers and ask them, get feedback. What is working, what is not working? So that feedback loop has to be really tight. Now, a builder may be a little uncomfortable in doing that customer-facing thing, but that's the difference between like an executive, a senior person. Engineer is someone who's just doing one thing in a small area of the company. But when you are in a very senior position, head of engineering or a CTO or a head of products, you are really looking at the company and what are the problems we are trying to solve. And those problems can be solved with an engineering mindset. So I don't see this thing as like a product as a completely different category. It does require some different skills. You need to know the customer really well. If your customer is an enterprise customer, you have to go meet them. If your customer is a consumer, you need to have deep understanding of how the consumer thinks. Why is the consumer not logging into our app so many times? Why is our consumer not happy? Is our UI right? Is the call to action correct? So those things you have to learn, but that's not rocket science. Like that's what I say. Like if you have solid foundation, right? Like if you know how to debug assembly, these problems are trivial to learn, and you have to keep growing. So again, in summary, to be in the product phase doesn't mean you don't like engineering. It just means that you solve slightly different set of problems and you are spending more time on definition of what needs to be done, not detailed implementation.
I would say that so you said that hey, when engineers move to product roles they struggle. My thinking would be that hey, product role is a very distinct role from engineering. Anybody moving to product role would struggle. I mean, because quality is hard to find, whether you are engineer, whether you are not engineer. Okay. But I would think that so what I mean to say that it's not that a non-engineer will not struggle.
Okay.
Everybody will struggle.
Fair enough.
Okay, fine. But at least my opinion is that the best product managers are those who have been engineers in tech companies, because they have seen the struggles faced by the engineers, and so they can appreciate better. Otherwise, it's like, why this is not working? Why such a simple bug fix is taking a lot of time? Such questions will arise for the PM who has not been an engineer and not faced these problems first.
I think hard to also gain respect from the engineers.
And when you question like this, ki, hey, why is it taking so much time, and you just don't get it, then you lose respect.
Look, I mean, everything is problem solving. Like an engineer is a good problem solver. I'm not saying that only engineers can be product people. You know, maybe you have a philosophy degree and you understand people so well, the consumer so well, then you could be an amazing product person owning design and interfaces and the copy used to, let people click on your button. So you need different skills. However, in general, an engineering problem solving background would be actually, in my opinion, an add-on for a product person.
Makes sense. And also I would say, like, within engineering itself, I think, like, after spending probably 7-8 years into the career, a lot of people start considering the question about whether they want to pursue on an IC track and sort of pick up deeper challenges and look towards architecting bigger systems, or like get a little bit more into people management, because larger teams will have EM kind of roles, and they will have the opportunities to do that as well. So when you have that sort of fork on the road in your mind, how do you go about thinking?
I'll give you my take on this. This is a very prominent question in that sort of people. I mean, in that age group of people. So you join always as an IC. A company, start of the career, you join as an IC, and then you get promoted as an IC. As you get promoted, you do more and more sophisticated stuff, let's say, because senior software engineer is supposed to do a better job than software engineer, more sophisticated, more detailed, and so on. But as you grow, you get a bottleneck, and you can get a bottleneck of one of the following two kinds. One is the bottleneck of your smartness. You are not that competent or that driven to increase the sophistication of your contribution in your company. Okay. That is one bottleneck that you can hit. Second bottleneck you can hit is organizational. If you are in a small company, you find that you understand everything, not everything, but many things, and now the company has, it's a small setup, the company has sort of, you have hit a ceiling of the company. No more sophisticated work is needed here. So this second kind of bottleneck, the organizational bottleneck, you will not hit if you were in a bigger company. If you are in a Google, let's say, then you will have more complex challenges. The scalability challenges, everything is more, the problems are getting solved. So when you hit any of these, so first of all, before you hit these bottlenecks, you should not move to management. You should continue working hard, working like an IC, because IC work is the real engineering work, not the manager work. Once you hit the bottleneck, so agar skill wala bottleneck, if you have hit the skill bottleneck, you are not that competent. Not the next level competent. You may be very competent. So maybe you move to, fine. Maybe one way to continue going is that you become manager. Then because you are pretty competent, you will be managing some teams now, and better people can take care of the more sophistication that is needed in the organization. Second case is that, my organization doesn't need any more sophistication, and there also maybe to continue growing, you may wish to move to management. That is my take.
I don't like managers.
Builders, who is the manager in himself.
Builders and sellers, right? So the definition of manager in India has been abused a lot.
Absolutely.
There should be enablers. There should be what I call people with skills to unblock and move things, right? Operators. or maybe leaders.
Right.
But most of the real work, like Vivek said, is essentially ICs doing things. There should be very little management in startups.
Right.
It should be guardrails, it should be checkpoints, it should be quality control, make sure things get done. When you have too many managers who are not good ICs, then things actually go bad in companies and startups. All these things like program manager. What is a program manager? And why can an engineering manager do program management, right? So we have no program managers. And if an EM doesn't code or is not an IC, then that EM cannot earn respect of the company, the peers. So to me, you have to be a builder at the core, and then maybe you are managing some people, you're having one-on-ones, you're babysitting engineers, right? What we have to do, not everybody is happy. So you have to go to them and say, how can, what's your problem? How can we help? These one-on-ones are very important.
So in defense of managers, we do need, so we had some teams whose manager resigned and they went away. So the manager went away, and then we had somebody move in as the manager of the team. And a few months later, I asked the team, do you need a manager or were you fine without the manager? And they were like, no, Vivek, we need the manager because manager takes care of talking with the other stakeholders, takes care of prioritizing, talking to other people so that the core team can do real work. Okay. So managers are needed.
The best managers are people who don't want to be a manager.
So that is a theory I am testing.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's true to a degree. I think I have led engineering teams twice. Once at Zomato, I'm doing that now at JioMart. I think very similar in flavor both of the times, and I really like it. Is that Zomato had actually a no manager culture, at least back then, and there was nobody with an engineering manager designation, and there were just two product managers, one person heading the entire product for the online ordering and one person heading entire product for everything that's not online ordering, like listings and Zomato Gold and everything. And they were very senior people who had been there actually for 7-8 years, and they had sort of become what you call a GM of a business unit kind of a thing. But apart from that, there weren't actually anybody with EM or PM titles actually, and the team sort of would be de facto led by somebody who is just the adult in the room.
Yes, correct.
Right? And they could be like the maybe the lead designer of that pod or the lead engineer of that pod, or anybody who is like and there are pods, and pods have back-end people, front-end people, and it's not like the back-end person is going to be the lead or the front-end person or the designer. It's not like that. It's just that the pod has a adult in the room, and they are the one who are mostly handling comms with leadership and other pods and everything to have some organizational order in place, but no one-on-one people management in that. I think that culture, there are two things that happen with that. One is you self-select for having people who don't need to be managed, right? But that culture obviously is also hostile to people who do need to be managed. But those people, they come in and they go out also very soon enough, and then you build a culture which is probably not so suitable for people who need a lot of coaching. And if you are comfortable doing that, and you don't think that to grow your talent pool, you don't need to bring in people who need to be coached a lot, you can operate in that way for a long time. I think Netflix very popularly had been in that mode for almost 10 years. I think now they have created some sort of hierarchy and managers, but they were in that VP and manager model for I think almost 10 years.
No, I agree. I mean, look, when Vivek and I first joined VMware, the head of the group was a PhD from Stanford. She was the manager of the group. My point is, lifestyle managers are bad for startups. The manager role is an enabler role, and a person who's a very good IC with some people skills, some planning and processes
staff
is a
manager kind of staff engineer kind of roles in companies.
That would be better. Lifestyle manager, people who don't do actual work, don't produce software, that has to go away.
Actually, I have one more problem with being a manager or in general. So when you are, so suppose you have an IC and now you became a manager. So slowly you will not be that hands-on. So initially it is very good because you were a manager 6 months ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, you still have not forgotten.
Yeah.
But as years will roll by, new technologies will emerge.
Yeah.
Now you will not be that appreciative, you will not understand that things in those things in detail. So for example, I am facing this personally. So now there are some things which I am pretty good with, but this, for example, Kubernetes. Now I have not used Kubernetes. Have you personally deployed Kubernetes?
No, but I've learned Red,
I have also learned Red, but Python, Java, C, C++, hands-on. I have done that myself. Android app, front end, iOS app. I have built an Android app. I have built an iOS app, launched it in Play Store, App Store. So when I talk to people, I get them better. Kubernetes, our DevOps person said that we have done this. Okay, fine, but I don't appreciate it as much. Now, as years will roll by, more such things will come.
Right.
Now, I used to write C code. Now, nobody writes C code. I mean, in VMware, we used to write. Now, so that knowledge is now obsolete. So, new knowledge will come up. I am not hands-on. So, that is why my thinking is that we should continue to be ICs for as long as possible, as long as we are growing, not hitting the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, so I think Vivek has a very good point. You know, a good.
Sorry. One more thing. I have a theory that every day I serve as a manager. Do you know the concept of a basis point?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So I deal a lot with delinquencies, fraud, how much delinquency and all. So my theory is that every day I am not an IC, which I am now not for 2 years. My intelligence goes down by 1 basis point. 100 days, 1%.
So, like in hiring also, I always ask when I interviewing people, what is your side gig, what is your hobby?
Yeah.
Because that really teaches you a lot about people. To Vivek's point, like I like to tinker on the side. I always wanted something over the weekend, right? So like I was telling you, whether I have a Raspberry Pi or, this Mindstorm that I'm, working with my son. It's so fascinating. It has sensors and you could quickly figure out distance and color and stuff. So, it just keeps you close to the real world, not abstraction layers on the top. Hey, these many transactions per second and 20 million API calls and everything. It's good to tinker and just open the IDE. Like somebody told me, Puneet, have you used Replit? Replit is this cloud-based browser IDE, and I said, I'll take it take a shot. And I went there, created, cloned a project, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It would take 2 hours to set up the whole thing and compile and build and deploy. This is all in the cloud.
I love taking interviews with Replit,
on being hands-on, when we were doing Swiggy integration. So we recently integrated with Swiggy in December, and due to some reasons, our team led by Puneet went to Swiggy office. So Swiggy was having bandwidth problems. They were not able to prioritize the project. We wanted to move fast. So some of us, including Puneet, went there and said, we will do the integration. We will write in your repositories and codes. Okay. And Puneet sent me a screenshot with him working on laptop. I am working. I said, show me the content. And then Puneet said, I'm actually writing test cases. And I was like, wow, Puneet, you are hands-on.
Vivek was impressed that I still know how to write a test case.
Yeah.
So that tinkering helps. Whatever you do, I think, Kubernetes is obviously a very extreme example where you need full AWS access and everything. But just, doing something on the side as a tech person will, I feel, make you feel that you're not, you are still reading or learning about what's bleeding edge, and it's nice to know that.
True, yeah.
I downloaded a paper recently to read about how these large language models are built, and the amount of mathematics used there was just mind-boggling. As soon as I see those big formulas with integration and differentiation, I'm like, this is tough.
Yeah.
It requires a master's level maths understanding of these neural networks and everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that when people go deep, that those skills will become handy 10, 15, 20 years later.
Right.
Maybe in 20 years most of the innovation is in biology, right? You're sending these probes inside your body and they're doing interesting things. So I want my son to read biology, right? These foundational skills can come handy in 10, 15, 20 years down the line. You never know.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think I agree, and I think it helps the leaders as well to be hands-on. I see that a lot currently at JioCinema, the way we operate. I think directors, VPs, they very frequently don't write code, but they do review code, bring in RFCs. Sometimes the RFCs have a lot of code in it, like in terms of like re-architecting things like that. And I think it sort of rallies the team around those projects also very well, because you're seeing that the VP has himself actually written down some sample code for the way we want to move from doing things from way A to B, and they are not sort of speaking from high atop the mountain through 3 layers of abstraction. They actually are talking about what we work on. So
best engineers are able to write things from scratch. Right? You could work in a company where you go in, existing code exists, and you go in and, hey, fix this, enhance this. Writing things from scratch is hard, 0 to 1, right? So like we were both CTOs in our previous startups, and when you are a small team, 4-6 people, you have to build it. Like my previous startup, WorkSpot, which was cloud streaming of desktops, it was sophisticated technology, and I proudly show off to Vivek that I wrote 20% of the first release because there were just 6-7 engineers who build the whole product. So you have to have those skills and scar tissue, and then you can obviously use your experience to manage teams and solve different problems over time.
Got it. Finally, I have a couple of questions, specifically one for Vivek and one for Puneet. So that's about some of the things you have done outside engineering, which is like you have done an MBA and you have spent some time as a VC. I would love to know a little bit about what was your experience doing that, and would you suggest other people to do that, and what's probably your perspective as an engineer of doing that? And probably start with you on the MBA front. I mean, when you were telling about your journey, you said that like IIM is a cool thing and you went and did that. But if you could describe a little more about your mindset about why going for an MBA, and then rest of your life, has it helped, has it not? What's your point of view on that?
Sure. So I studied at IIT and then did my masters all in computer science, and I loved computer science. Okay. And during my first job, VMware, again, very, very thoroughly enjoying. But I wanted to return back to India. And so I thought I will return back, and I did not, I at that time implicitly I used to think that I have done I used to do very well in academics also, in class 10th, class 12th, very, very good grades across the subjects. Okay. So my thinking was that I will so till that point, till MBA, I had liked all the things that I had done, and I had also excelled in all the things that I had done. I mean, sports and all, I was never interested, so don't ask about that. Okay. So professional type of thing. Okay. So my implicit belief was that I can return back to India, do MBA, and maybe my thinking was I will do finance. Okay, finance mein number is there, and I am good, math whatever I was good at. So my thinking was that let me try to do IIM, after that finance somewhere in India, that will work out well. But I returned back to do MBA in 2008. And you might remember it was the recession times. And I did my internship in 2009 in JP Morgan, Mumbai.
Okay.
And it was a very gloomy atmosphere there. Gloomy means people used to say that see this floor, it used to be fully full, and now it's like 1/3 full with you interns around. So it was a very gloomy, and people who were there, my supervisor or whoever, it was not known if they will be there tomorrow. So because it was recession times. So it became a very negative experience for me. And I also realized that finance has some intersection with maths, but with the kind of work we were doing there, that capability of mine was not to be utilized. Okay. So at the end of that internship, which is 1 year into my MBA at IIM Bangalore, I thought कि ये हो नहीं पा रहा है. I figured out कि I don't know, I might be 99 or 99.5 percentile engineer, but where I will land here, I don't know. I am not confident. So I called up my father and I said, father कि पापा ये MBA छोड़ते हैं, मैं वापस चला जाता हूँ. ठीक है, US, ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा. माई फादर सेड कि 1 साल लगा लिए हो, 1 साल और लगा लो, डिग्री हो जाएगी. सो आई सेड या ठीक है, लेट्स स्पेंड 1 more year. आई मे बी MBA degree is something useful. So that is why I continued with MBA, got the degree, but after that never did anything related to, related to my degree. And actually getting first job after MBA was a little difficult, because anybody who sees my latest degree will think that I am looking for a PM job if I am applying to a tech company.
Right.
So, but I can't hide it also. Otherwise it will be lying. I mean, they will ask, what were you doing for 2 years? I will have to say that I was doing
even
MBA.
more worried if you try to hide the fact that you are doing MBA from IIM.
Yeah. So I have to write it down that so as to explain that gap. So I used to have a big asterisk. First, this is only true for first job after MBA, first tech job after MBA. I had a big asterisk with written, although I have done an MBA, please note that I am looking for a software engineering job. And after that, I got the job. So this was, so after that I then tried my own startup and worked at a startup and not to do with MBA. But how has MBA helped? MBA has helped in 2 ways. In the first way in which it has helped is that there are some terminologies that you learn. Cash flow, profit and loss statement, balance sheet. 2 years to learn those things is not a good trait. I mean, you can learn it in a month. You can learn it from
ROI is not good.
YouTube video. But I don't know whether I would have put that time. But maybe nowadays, Puneet, we talk so much about nowadays. I'm a little senior in my company, so I get to actually see some of these things. So, and I can appreciate better than what I could have appreciated otherwise. But ROI-wise, not a good. Second way in which MBA helps is that I interact with a lot of MBAs. Our product management team consists of a lot of MBAs, and so you understand that this guy also doesn't know anything special. So yeah. Otherwise, for example, let's say I am talking physics to a person who is PhD in physics. Then I'll be like, this guy knows something that I don't know, and that will actually be true. But now when I'm talking to somebody who is discussing about product, this is all common sense. I mean, yeah. So I understand कि कुछ उधर ज्ञान नहीं है ज़्यादा, confidently बात करो. So these are the 2 ways in which doing MBA helped.
I think the second thing is a very useful thing, like
So to everybody, so it is like so there is actually this has happened in my life repeatedly, that there is no magic after all. There is no magic. So for example, you go study at undergrad, they teach you something, very good, but there is no magic. You can study it yourself also if you are determined. Similarly, I am very much interested in mathematics. So in mathematics, there is a saying that every problem is either hard or trivial. So what it means is that till the time mathematicians are not able to prove something, it is hard. But then when they prove it, it's like it's obvious. So
in hindsight, everything is obvious.
So once you know it, it is not a magic. So maybe actually I am underselling. I mean, MBA, maybe there are learnings which I have imbibed, because once you do something, then that glamour or that uniqueness is gone. So it is not a magic. It is true for many things. So many times we hear that, okay, we aspire to be very rich. But if you are very rich, I don't know. I mean, I am rich only to a certain extent. I think the final conclusion is कि पहले वाला भी ठीक था, अभी भी ठीक है, पहले भी ठीक था. There is no magic in life. So let's just live.
Nice. I'll come to you, Puneet. You have actually worked as a VC as well, and you have invested in a bunch of startups. So how do you look at even startups when you're investing in them, as somebody who has built things as an engineer, So it's the engineer's perspective of being an investor.
The correction, I only worked at a VC firm for 6 months. So, it's like you do an internship in a company and you say, I was a VC. No, I was not a VC. I just helped a VC. I was an EIR for 6 months for correctness. And I did not like that job at all. So I said, I'm not, meant for this. I like to build things. So that was the thing. I have invested in 7 companies and we have this funny share. There is this famous professor, UPSC professor called Vikas Divya Kirti. He has this, I saw this quote and I love this quote, which is like, फितूर होता है हर उम्र में जुदा, पहले खिलौना, फिर माशूका, फिर रुतबा, फिर खुदा. So most of the people actually get stuck at rutba. Power, influence.
Do you get it? I think you should explain it.
Yes. So, your passion is different at every age.
Different ages, yeah.
First, it's a toy. Then it's a lover. Then it's power, influence and everything. And then once you've given up on all things, then God. Right? So, the analogy for tech people is, फितूर होता है हर उम्र में जुदा, पहले staff engineer, फिर principal engineer, फिर CTO, फिर angel investor. So when I started my company, I was a CTO and I'm like, hey, nothing is left. What is the next thing? So I said, I have to invest in some companies because all the cool people invest in companies. Now fast forward, I made 7 investments. One investment did really well. So there was a company called CloudKnox acquired by Microsoft for, $200+ million. Very good exit. Balaji Parami, thank you so much for that ROI. Balaji was a CEO, again worked with us at VMware. So your network helps. But the reality is the ROI is much better if I just park that money in the Sensex or just going long on something. As an investment, it's very risky. It may not work for you, but you learn a lot because you meet these people and you start judging people. One thing I've learned is in a great market, even the average entrepreneurs do well. But if the market sucks, then it doesn't matter how good you are and what the talent pool is and how hard you work, you will not be able to build a successful company. Right? So you just have to be a little lucky to survive and be in the right position at the right time to get a good exit. So that's what happens in India also, right? Right now, if you're doing AI company, you can go to any VC and raise money. 5 years ago, if you're doing cloud, you could raise money. 10 years ago, if you're doing SaaS, you could raise money. 15 years ago, if you were doing data center, you could go and raise money. So these are these trends, and you need to know how to ride the wave. Right? There is a wave, and if you just try to do something in that wave, you can do something meaningful. It's interesting. You meet smart people. You get to. It helps your judgment. Like, I'll give you an example. I keep a notebook of the companies I see, the new companies. I use them. I'm very hands-on, and then I try to say whether this company will work or not. And this has been a very good exercise for me because it helps me, add finesse to my judgment on companies and ideas. About 10-15 years ago, there was a company called Quora, and I thought this would be a fantastic company. So I wrote in my notebook, home run, a huge company, and Quora is not doing that well. And then now in retrospect, I see it's not doing well because it was catering to a very small audience. It's a knowledge thing. It's like Reddit. People who really crave for knowledge go there and get answers, right? The world is all about YouTube, Reels, Instagram, TikTok. So companies which cater to 90% of the people in the world actually do better than these niche, good for society things. Not that it should not be done, it should be done. But I'm just giving an example that, I, in my own humility, I have realized I'm not a good investor because I think in terms of what is this thing doing for the society or technology or something. Whereas the best investors actually understand the sins and how to build something where a lot of people will waste time and they will be able to monetize. That's my take.
Do you think also when you are evaluating a company for investing into it, as somebody who has been a hands-on engineer and builder of things, which is asking is as a very personal question, because I feel it because I've sat across like somebody explaining what they're building, and a friend of mine who has been in marketing all along, and he's like, hey, this is really good and it'll work. And my first reaction most of the time is like, I don't think that tech is even gonna work. I don't think supremely critical of that what they're trying to build is not even gonna work, is what I always feel like my first reaction to anytime I see a product. And obviously somebody raising something like an angel at that stage, obviously things are supremely half baked, and it just makes me think like, hey, this does not even think like it'll work here.
Yeah, no, but embracing hard problems is actually a good idea, right? If you try to build something which is very hard to do, on day one, you have a competitive advantage, because when you solve that problem in 1 year, you will be 18 months ahead of everyone else. But if you're trying to build another app that anybody can copy, like copying is also common in the East. What are you? We say, oh, we are X for, we are X for this market.
Uber for X.
Uber for India, or, we are something for India. Now, however, let's say in our company, we are doing very sophisticated underwriting, fraud control. It's meant for the Indian market. The data is about the Indian market. So we have a deep moat. And I see a lot of companies in India doing that. Right? So the key is, what is the advantage you are bringing into the product that is unique and differentiated? Because if it's just throwing 6 engineers on a problem, Microsoft and Google will build everything in the world. But startups exist because either the problem is too small for a Microsoft to go after, or Microsoft has not even thought about it yet. Right? So as a startup, you find something niche, very small. Like Paul Graham says, do things that don't scale. So you build something which is unique and differentiated for a small audience first, make them extremely happy, and then try to scale it. For every Slack, there is a Microsoft Teams. Right? Slack did all the hard work, build the market and everything, and Microsoft said, oh, we can also do this. They took all the features and put it in Microsoft Teams, and they have a distribution engine. Now, if Slack had deep competitive advantage, they would have dominated the market. But reality is that Microsoft Teams did 80% of that. Now, nobody can copy Google search. It's differentiated. It's deep knowledge, right? Cisco routers are still there. Cisco, technologies or switches are still there. So deep technologies, deep tech gives you that long-term competitive advantage. And that's what I look for in at least, because that's how my view of the world. If somebody says, hey, I'm doing this and this will do great in India, it's a game, I'm like, hey, this is not my swim lane, thank you very much. And I'm happy with just investing in a Sensex now.
Sure. Thanks for that answer. And I would say thank you for spending a lot of time here and answering a lot of different questions. I think we covered quite the length and breadth. And on a final note, I think all the best for Simpl to grow, and really love seeing very India specific problems being solved. So all the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.